Hello and welcome to tonight's debate between District 2 Law County Commissioner Eugene Powell and his opponent Eugene Moon. Thank you so much for coming to this debate, which is brought to you as a public service by the South Hall Gazette. According to our press release for tonight's event, the South Hall Gazette is presenting this debate in order to allow voters to get to know the potential candidates before making their decision. We are committed to being a reliable and trustworthy news service for Powell County, as well as helping readers become more acquainted with their fair city, which is part of the reason the South Hall Gazette is sponsoring this debate for the residents of Powell County. We are unique in that the people behind this news source are mainly people who are interested in getting to know the community. Even if one is a local and has lived in South Hall for their entire life, there are always new perspectives to be had, and the South Hall Gazette reports and news from an unbiased view. Ultimately, the goal of the South Hall Gazette is to unify, inspire, and bring a sense of community into our readers. Before we begin tonight's debate, I'd like to thank members of our staff that work diligently to make tonight happen. Thank you so much for your efforts and your involvement with South Hall Gazette. It's much appreciated. Also, I'd like to thank Sweet Butts, who are outside selling food and drinks. I heard it's pretty good, so I'd like to thank them for coming. And finally, I'd like to thank both Commissioner Powell and Eugene Moon for agreeing to do this debate. It is very much appreciated. Thank you. The South Hall Gazette has been in contact for close to a month with both campaigns to put tonight's debate together. But before tonight, I've never met Mr. Powell or Mr. Moon. And that was purposeful because I didn't want to form any kind of opinion with either of them for the sake of objectivity. The questions for tonight's debate, I feel, are fair, to the point, and unbiased. The questions are just about the issues here in Powell County and in District 2. The candidates on Saturday will email the subjects of the questions that I'm going to ask tonight, so that they have an idea of the questions I'm going to ask for tonight's debate. The candidates were given the actual questions for tonight's debate just before I started to speak, so they can get their thoughts together. So it's safe to say that both candidates will answer these questions on the fly. They have no prepared answers. So with that being said, here are the rules for tonight's debate. The audience can applaud and express displeasure politely, and only after a candidate has finished speaking. If someone calls for a disturbance, that person will be escorted out. Please respect the fact that our staffers worked too hard to put this together, and please respect these two candidates. Remember, these two men didn't have to do this. Both candidates will be given a minute to respond to a question. After each candidate has responded, I will allow up to 2 minutes for each candidate to debate the question among themselves. I will be alternating between both candidates as we go through each question. Before I start asking the questions, I will allow the candidates 2 minutes each for making an opening statement. If a particular question, in my judgment, needs to be debated beyond the time limit I've established, I will allow a 1 minute extension. Candidates may request an extension. Candidates are free to walk around the room and speak to the audience if they wish. And finally, after I've gone through all of the questions, the candidates will be allowed 2 minutes for closing statements. I flipped the coin before we started, and Mr. Powell, I believe, is going to go first, so sir, go ahead.
I'm Billy Powell, and I'm running for re-election to the Hall County Commission. I appreciate your taking the time out of your schedule to come listen to this interesting debate tonight. I know you'd probably rather be here than anywhere else, but we appreciate you taking the time. I want to point out like 3 things that'll help introduce myself. Experience. The first project that I worked on the commission about 7 years ago was to construct the new county jail, $54 million voter-approved jail. I was one of 2, Commissioner Galey at the time, that represented the commission's interest in working with the contractor and the program manager. That $54 million project, and everybody has an idea about government projects, will be completed on time and on budget. That's $54 million that you entrusted us to do what is best with your money. Okay. The other thing is the old jail. Now, I'm sure you've seen the newspaper headlines. The old jail. Get that old jail out of Midtown so the city can work on revitalizing Midtown. Well, I was very instrumental in securing Corrections Corporation of America as a tenant. They paid the county $2 million a year for that old dilapidated asset after they invested $4 million of their money into the facility. All county invested nothing. Now, after working with the city of Gainesville, we have consummated a deal to sell that asset to the city of Gainesville for $7.2 million after CCA paid us an additional $1 million in rent this year. Overall, that project brought into the county, or will bring into the county, about $14 million. Now, part of that money, the 7.2, is going to be put into the general fund. 5 of it's going into reserves. Okay. Do I have an extension? Okay. One of the things I'm proudest of is I have defended the taxpayer. That's what conservative Republicans are supposed to do. I have fought to keep your taxes low, and I can now say that 8 years in a row, we have not had a tax increase or roll-up. I think that speaks volumes about this commission. I'll save the rest of the letter.
I'd like to thank everyone for coming out tonight on a Wednesday night. I know a lot of people in this room, a few of you I do not know, so I'm going to take a minute and introduce myself. My name is Eugene Moon. I believe that less government is better government, and when you limit the size of government, several things occur. Get rid of bureaucracy, you restore free market principles, you restore personal responsibility back to everyone's family. I could rattle on about a lot of other stuff, but I want to take this opportunity, and I want to do something a lot of candidates never do, and I want to introduce my wife. Stand up, Rose. This is what makes me the candidate that I'm going to be for Hall County, is my support system. Troy Phillips, his wife Heather, my daughter Jade, I got 2 more, Abigail and Savannah, who aren't with me. These people pound the pavement with me on the weekends and during the week because they have the same thing I want inside their heart, and that's to make Hall County a better place, the place it used to be that we all grew up in. So, my name is Eugene. I'll say a little more for the end, but let's start answering some questions. Thank you.
All right. First question for you, Mr. Moon. What are your thoughts about the Liberty Mutual building? Should the county have bought it in the first place? How can we make it so that this building becomes cost-efficient and a viable part of all county government?
First problem, I'm not in agreement with the Liberty Mutual building.